for joining. My name is Reggie. I'm one of the trainers here at Liaison International. And what we have planned for today is kind of a overview of how you can review applicants in the WebAdMIT software for NAFCAS. On the slide that's showing now, this kind of gives a rough outline of what we'll be discussing today. We'll talk about logging in. We'll talk about how to use the applicant details page so you can get all of your information about applicants. And we'll also talk about using the assignments feature and some of the things you can do with local statuses and adding new users. And we'll also have opportunity for question and answer at the end. So feel free to pass along your questions as you have them. You can pass them right along in the chat area, and we'll be sure to try to get to all of those. So that being said, we're going to look at a demo version of our WebAdMIT software. And I kind of want to start just by giving you a brief overview of what we're looking at here. So when an applicant logs in to the applicant portal for NAFCAS, we're going to see a page that looks something like this. And what they're required to do on this application is complete these 4 quadrants. So they fill out their personal information, their academic history, their supporting information, their program materials. And the program material section is the area that you've configured specifically for your program, anything additional that's required of them. Once they do go ahead and submit their application, once they complete that part and submit their application, then they appear here eventually in the WebAdMIT software. And WebAdMIT is really the application management software that you can use to review applicants and to see all their information and all of that. So that's what we'll be talking about today. To start, we're going to take a look at the applicant details page. This is the dashboard. So this is the first page that you'll see when you log into the software. Depending on what access you have, you might some of the menu options that you'll see here might be a little bit different from what you'll see in your live environment. But generally, the dashboard is going to look something like this. Now, you're going to have a search link that shows up in the upper left-hand corner. And if you click on that, it's going to take you to a page where you can see all of the applicants that you currently have access to. And you can click on any of these to view that particular applicant's information. If we click there, we'll just click on one of our demo applicants here. And all of your applicants are going to have a page that looks something like this. So it'll include all their information, their contact information will be showing here. You can kind of scroll through here to see everything that's required of the applicant to submit their application. A couple of things to point out here. There's an assignment section, and we're going to talk about using that section in just a moment here. But there's an assignment section if you're using the assignments feature within your program. This is where that'll be. This is where assignments will be added and where they can be responded to. And we'll take a look at how exactly that works in just a little bit here. If we scroll down a little bit further, there's a document section here. And here's where they'll be able to, where applicants will be, any of their submitted documents will show up here. Now, in the live environment, this section is going to look a little bit different from you. There is a recent enhancement to this area here. Just scroll up a little bit here. Currently, what we're looking at here in our demo environment, you're seeing all of the evaluations, the full application, and the applicant uploaded documents and everything else that they've submitted will show up right in that document section. I'm going to give you kind of a quick snapshot of what that's going to actually look like for you now in our live environment. Now that this enhancement has gone through, just kind of a screenshot of what that section is going to look like. So you have the documents panel, but you'll have each document divided into different tabs here. And you can kind of click on whichever tab is relevant to you, whichever one that you need to use. So now the full application PDF is going to be the entire application just in a PDF format. So everything that you'll see, everything that shows up on this page in PDF format is going to show if you click on that full application PDF, and you'll be able to download that on your side. Some programs like to save them somewhere or even print them out if necessary. You'll be able to do that from here. And again, you can get to, depending on what other items that you need and that you have access to, you can get to the evaluations and the other applicant uploaded documents. They'll all be available in that section there. That being said, if we scroll down a little bit further on this page, we'll get to a personal information section where you can see biographic information for the applicant. Scrolling down further, we'll see their education history listed here. And as we go down further, there's sections here, and this is all depending on what access that you have. A little bit later, we're going to talk about how to set up permissions for users to kind of dictate which of these sections they'll be able to see and work with. So we'll be covering that a little bit as well. But here you'll be able to see there's an email section. So if you need to send an email to an applicant, you can click on the new email button from here, and that'll take you to an email editor where you'll be able to send a message directly to this applicant. There's also a notes panel here where you can just click that new note button. You'll be able to type in any notes. This is internal, so only your team internally will be able to see what you've entered there. But you can add any notes that you want to be attached to this applicant. And then lastly, there's a history panel that'll show up here. This will detail all of the updates that an applicant has gone through, as well as you'll be able to see any local status changes that have been made on your side for the applicants. And we'll talk about the local statuses in just a moment as well. Let's scroll up for a moment. And we're going to talk about this assignment section, just to kind of give you an idea of how the assignment section works. If you have management permissions or administrative permissions in the software, you're going to have this assignments link that shows up here under management. And here you'll be able to go in and kind of design a review assignment. And what's entailed in that, I'll just go into edit one of the ones that we have here. What's entailed in that is establishing what questions that you want your reviewer to respond to. So you can give them specific things. It's almost like setting up a worksheet for the reviewers. You can tell them to look at references, personal statements, really whatever is part of your process, whatever is required in your process to be reviewed. So you can add all these items that you want to be reviewed, and then you can decide if you want the reviewer to score on those items, so to enter a numeric score. If you want them to put a comment in, there'll be boxes to check off for each of those items. And then there's an option for overall scores. You can decide how you want the overall score to be calculated for each of the applicants, if you're using scores at all. And if so, you can decide if you want it to be a sum, so it'll add up these individual scores, or if you want it to be an average, or if you want the reviewer to be able to type in their own score that's not necessarily related to the score they've placed on the other items here. Then you have the ability to turn on overall remarks, which just gives the reviewer a place where they can choose from whichever items that you establish for them. In this case, what we have is recommend interview, do not recommend interview, but you can make these items whatever you want them to be, and you could add as many different options as you want there. And all of this is really just for the reviewer to respond to. So again, it's like creating a worksheet for your reviewers. And once you establish that, then you can establish who is going to be reviewing which applicants. So if we go back to an applicant's page here, we're going to click on the new assignment button. And what you'll see here, as the person doing the assigning, I'll be able to choose which review assignment I want to assign and which user, which WebAdMIT user I want to assign the applicant to. So I'm going to just pick a person here. It'll give you an optional due date here. So I'm going to pick a due date and we'll submit that. So now this applicant has been assigned to that reviewer. So now I just assigned it to the account that I'm logged in with now. So we're going to take a look at how this is going to appear on the reviewer side of things. So if you've logged in as a reviewer and you have applicants that have been assigned to you, you're going to have the review assignments panel that shows up here on your dashboard. And then you'll be able to see who's been assigned to you, and you can click on any of them to view their information. So we're going to click on this one here, and that takes us back to that applicant's page. And then we can scroll down to the assignment section, and now we can respond to each of those assignment questions. So there's a submit results link that shows up here. If we click on submit results, there's all of the items that we requested that the reviewer respond to. If we need to, we can kind of move this off to the side while we scroll down and go to the section that we're looking for here. So we can still kind of navigate around and do what we need to do in each of these sections. And then we can respond to each of these with our numeric score and our comments if we have any. So we'll just put some numbers in for these. We can type in our overall comments. And we can choose from those options that were provided for us here. And once we do that, we can hit complete assignment. And now that information has become locked in, and the review assignment is complete at that point. So now if we go back to our dashboard, we saw before we had 3 assignments listed there. Now the review assignments panel only has 2 because it only shows the ones that are currently open that haven't been completed yet. So again, you would complete the same process for the next one. Just click on the applicant's name. It'll take you back to their page. And you can go down to the assignment section again, submit your results for this assignment until all of those are completed. So that's really how the review assignments section would work. And of course, it is up to you as far as whether you'll be using the review assignments section, whether you will need to go to the assignments panel and respond to assignment questions like we just saw there. So different programs kind of handle that differently depending on what their process is. But if you are using the assignments feature, that's how it'll appear there for you, and that's how you'll be able to respond to any review questions that have been presented to you. Otherwise, it'll be the same way to view applicants. You'll just go to their page directly, and you can see all of their information as we mentioned here. That being said, we're going to change gears just a little bit. And we're going to talk about the local statuses in the software. Now, depending on, this again is depending on what permissions that you'll have in the software, and that can be changed, or the permissions can be adjusted, and we'll talk about how to do that in just a little bit as well. But one of the features of the software is the local status feature, and essentially what that lets you do is categorize your applicants based on where they are in your process. So you can create as many different local statuses as you want, and you might consider them almost like file folders that you move applicants into depending on where they are in your process. So just to kind of give you the setup side of it, if we go into management here, there's a link for local status. And here's where these local statuses will be created. So in our demo environment, we have a bunch that are already in there. But if you were creating a status from scratch, you would just click on new local status there. So you can put a title for your local status there. We'll call that one ready to be reviewed. And then you can link it to a decision code. So it could be received under review in this case. The decision codes are kind of like the CAS-wide, the NAFCAS-wide codes that are kind of pre-established. And if there's any that match directly with the local status that's being created here, you can just kind of link it there. Then there's an option to associate a custom color with it. That's just for aesthetic purposes. If you want to make it a little bit quicker to recognize what status an applicant is located in, you can do that. So we'll just choose one there. Then there's an option to attach an email to the local status. And what that does is gives you the ability to, once the local status is assigned to an applicant, it'll come up with a prompt and ask you if you want to send the associated email template. So what some programs do is have a thank you for applying type of email that they'll create, and then they'll attach that to their to one of their initial local statuses that they would place an applicant in. So then they'll have the option to send that email out whenever they change that status. So we'll just attach one for demonstration purposes. There's an optional description. Again, this is internal, so only your internal team will be able to see what description you've placed on this local status. And then there's the option to enable it for whichever programs you want to enable it for. So we're going to submit that. So now that local status is created. So now we're going to take a look from the side of someone who wants to change a local status for one of their applicants. So again, to view all of your applicants, you can go to the search page here at the top left. You'll see all the applicants that you have access to view. You can click on any of them from here. And if this was one of the applicants, maybe we're tasked with reviewing this applicant, so we had to go through a certain number of things to look at. And then maybe at the end, and this of course all depends on what your process is, but at the end maybe you're required to change this applicant to another status to kind of indicate that that they've been reviewed or that they're ready to go on to whatever the next step is. So to do that, there's a designation section that shows up here, and there's a drop down that lets you pick which local status you want to place an applicant in. So for demonstration purposes, we're going to put this applicant, we'll say, to be interviewed, and you'll see it changes that local status, it changes the decision code, and it makes that update for us. If we were to change this applicant to the one that we just created, that ready to be reviewed one, you'll see it comes up and asks if we want to send the associated email, since we had an email attached to that local status. And at that point, we can choose whether we want to go ahead and send the email, whether we want to save it as a draft, or if we want to edit it before we send it. Or we can just choose do not send to not send that email at all. So as many local statuses as you need to create, those can all be created within the software. And then whatever is established there, you can change whichever local status, change applicants to whichever local status you need to. And one way to view the local status is if we go back to our dashboard here. On the right-hand side, there's a designations by local status panel. And this is a nice way of viewing your applicant pool. You can see how many applicants are in each of your local statuses. And with any of these, you can click on the name of that local status, and it'll take you to a page that shows you all of the applicants that are currently placed within that local status. So you'll kind of be able to work with them from there. So that's one way of doing that, and it really just depends on kind of what your process is as far as how you'll go about completing that part of the process. So that being said, the next thing I'll show you is related to user permissions. So we want to talk about how to add users and how to adjust their permissions. So if you have access to the management section, on the left-hand side, there's going to be a link here that says admissions users. And if we click on that, we'll see the list of users that are already in our software, so we can kind of work with any of those. If we need to edit any of those, maybe change the email address that's listed, or update any of their contact information or what they have access to, you can use this edit pencil here. We're going to demonstrate creating a new user though, so we'll click on new user. And this part is pretty straightforward. You can just put in the user's name. There's really the only mandatory fields here are going to be the first name, last name, as well as the email address. And then once you have that information in, you can go ahead and submit the page there, and that account will be created. So you also have some. I'm just going to put a email address in there. You'll also have some optional fields here. There's title, position. You don't have to put something in there. That's really if you just want to indicate what type of user this is. It doesn't come with any additional permissions to make a selection there, so it's completely optional. You don't have to do that. But if you did want to make a selection there, you could do that from here. Also, you have the ability to put in a phone number and an extension. Again, that's optional. You don't have to do that to submit, but you could do that if you wanted to indicate what that information is. Then there's a primary user checkbox that you'll see here. This is another field that doesn't come with any additional permissions or anything like that. It's really just kind of a flag to indicate that this is one of your institution's main users. So if you want to mark that off, you can, but again, not mandatory to do that. Now, as far as controlling the permissions of the user, what the user can do and see in the software, that's all controlled by the work group that they're placed in. So if you click this drop down for work group, by default, the only one that's going to be there is WebAdMIT administrators. So it'll be up to whoever is already established as an administrator to kind of establish the other work groups that are going to be available to you. But if you have WebAdMIT administrators listed there, you'll have essentially, if you give someone WebAdMIT administrator access, that's going to give them full access to everything in the software. So they'll be able to create anything. They can go in and create email templates and add new users and change users' permissions and work with the assignments features and all of that. So they'll have kind of the keys to everything if you give them WebAdMIT administrator. If you want them to have anything less than that, you'll have to create a work group for them. Or choose from, if someone has already created work groups for you, you can choose from one of the other ones that's listed there. Again, by default, the only one listed is WebAdMIT administrators. So if you want to create a work group with anything less than full permission, the way to do that is going to be to go to the work group section. I'm just going to click on that to open that up. There's some that are already listed in our demo environment here. But this is pretty straightforward how you'll do this. If you click on New Work Group, you can decide who this work group is for. So what some programs like to do is create a work group that's especially for reviewers, maybe for interviewers, really for any person that's kind of involved in your process. You can create a separate work group for them. And the way that works is the work group kind of maintains the permissions. So then if you have a group of users that are all going to have that same set of permissions, you only have to set this up once. And then when you create their account, you can just put them within this work group that you've created here. So you'll give the work group a name, and then you'll decide what permissions the users in this work group will have. Most of these are pretty straightforward. There's one for changing local statuses. There's one for the ability to email applicants. A couple to point out here, though, there's one that mentions configure software. If you give someone that access, you're giving them access to the management menu here. So it's essentially giving them administrative rights if you turn that configure software permission on. So that'll be up to you if you want to give them access to that management menu. And at this point, that management menu, if they have that, they'll have access to all of those items under management. So they'll be able to kind of work with all of those items if you give them that. A couple other things to point out here. There's one for manage assignments and interviews. If they have that, that means they'll be able to assign if you've created review assignments like we were just looking at, they'll be able to assign applicants to other users. And they'll also be able to edit assignments so they can remove an assignment if they need to, or make changes to it if you give them access to that. There's another permission that's listed here that kind of goes along with it that says view other users' assignment and interview results. If this is going to be a reviewers work group, maybe you don't want them to be able to view what the other reviewers have entered. So if you leave this unchecked, they won't be able to view the results from other review assignments. They'll only be able to see their own. If you check that off, they'll be able to see everything that's been submitted as a review assignment. Another permission to point out here, view all applicants. If you check that permission off, then the users in this work group will be able to see all of the applicants within the programs that they have access to. Now, some programs like to leave this unchecked because what they prefer to do is assign applicants directly to users. So if this is unchecked, the only applicants that a user would see, who's a user who's in this work group, the only applicants they'll see are the ones that have been directly assigned to them with the assignments feature. So if you prefer to kind of directly assign applicants, you can leave this view all applicants unchecked, and the users will only be able to see who's been directly assigned to them. So you can kind of go through and decide what permissions you want to establish, and that controls what the users can do in the software. Now the next section on this page controls what the users can see on the software, or for each applicant, I should say. So when we viewed an applicant page earlier, we saw how it's divided into all those different panels. Well, this is where you can dictate which of those panels you want each user to be able to see. So if you want them to be able to see all of the panels that are available on that page, you can kind of go through each of these sections and just click the green plus sign to add those panels. And this will add all the information for the users to be able to see. If for whatever reason there's a section that you don't want them to have access to, if you don't want them to see a certain piece of information on the application, you can just leave that unchecked here. You can leave that out, and that panel won't appear for them. If it's one that's already been added, you can just simply click the red X button to remove it from here. You can remove as many as you need to and add as many back as you need to, and that will give them access to see those panels if you've done that. So now we'll go ahead and submit this once we've established all of the permissions that we want. Looks like we have one with that name already. So we'll go ahead and submit this. And now if we go back to our admissions user section here. And now if we go to edit one of our existing users, or if we go to create a new user, let's just edit one of our existing ones here. You'll see now in the workgroup section, we have that data entry 1 workgroup that we just created. So we can change that user to this workgroup, and then any permissions that we established within that workgroup will automatically apply to this user as soon as we click submit here. One other thing to point out here is that the program assignments, this is going to show you a list of all the programs that you have access to. Any that you check off here will give this user access to that program as well. If you leave it unchecked, they won't be able to work with those programs. So some, depending on what your process is, you might want some users to only be able to work with specific programs. And if that's the case, you can just check off the ones that, that are relevant there. So that being said, those were the main things that we had to cover on our agenda. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have, anything that we covered, anything that we didn't cover. You'll be able to pass those questions along. One other thing to point out, though, before we open things up for questions, if you do run into any issues at any point, feel free to reach out to our support team. We have a team of people who support the WebAdMIT software, so they can answer any questions that you have, any issues that you run into. Feel free to reach out to them. The phone number is 716-636-7777, option 7, as well as you can reach them by email at webadmitsupport@liaisonedu.com. So you can reach out if you're having any issues within the WebAdMIT software. Feel free to reach out to our team using either of those methods.
Thank you, Reggie. That was very helpful. And to all of our people on the call, you can go ahead and start posting any questions in the chat box. I see some people have started doing that. And we'll open this up to the Q&A.
Okay, so it looks like one of the questions that came in was in regards to the transcripts. Now, I'm not sure on that. Phaedra, maybe you might have some information. Does NAFCAS allow viewing of transcripts?
Can you say that one more time, Reggie? That you cut out.
Oh, sorry about that. The question was in regards to not being able to see the transcripts in the full application. Do you know if that's part of NAFCAS?
Once an application is in receive status, so once they have submitted you submitted their application and paid for their application, and if their transcript has been submitted, they should be able to see the transcript within the transcript panel.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a follow-up to that question. They're asking about verified applications. Okay, so with that, with NAFCAS, I don't believe there's actually coursework verification in NAFCAS. So the last application status that you'll see available is going to be the complete status. So you won't see those that are listed as verified there. If I'm not
you will actually, Reggie, you will be able to see the verified status because there is a GPA that is entered into the applicant's record that we liaison team is actually doing that on the back end. So once an applicant has, so to kind of recap, once an applicant has paid for their application for their fee for at least one of their designated sites programs, and you submitted their application, their transcripts have been received and entered into our system, and the minimum required letters of recommendations have been received. They will go into complete status, and that's when they get lined up for verification or to be verified, which means the GPA is then entered into the system. And internally, as we were just talking to Lindsay and the association, once they get in queue for verification, it could be less than a 24-hour turnaround time. We typically have our standard language that we communicate to applicants just in case it does not happen within a 24-hour turnaround, but it could be a very quick process. So we try to make it a very quick process internally once we have the application in complete status.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that, Phaedra. All right, so let's see. Another question came in regarding how to filter applications based on their questions, and that's a good question. I could show you how to do that. One of the features of WebAdMIT is the list manager. So if we go to the list manager here, one of the nice things that it lets you do, and click on New Field List, it really lets you filter your, it lets you query your application pool for anything that's on the application. So if you want to, for example, if you want to define all of your in-state applicants, you can kind of open this up. This is all divided into the different sections of the application. In that case, you'd be able to find personal, state of residence, find a state that you're looking for, and pick that out there. In the case of the questions, that's going to be listed here too. So if you want to find everyone who responded in a specific way to one of your questions, those are going to be listed here too. It's going to be a little bit different from our demo environment as far as how it's labeled, but I believe it'll be, I think it's going to be listed down in this area here, where it'll list the name of, list what your questions are, and you'll be able to filter based on that. So you'll see whatever your responses are available. You can kind of create a list for each of the available responses, and you can kind of filter using that information as well. So let's see, another question that came in. Is there a way to find out about the most recently completed applications? So the way to do that, if we go to the dashboard, now by default, what everyone is going to have is this section here that says recently submitted designations. So this is going to show you the ones who've come into your applicant pool most recently. If you're looking for, if you only want to find a list of those who have been completed most recently, or maybe those who have been verified most recently, there's a few different ways of doing that. You could also use a list manager for that. What some programs do is create, and this really kind of depends on how you work in your process. So there's a few different ways you can do it. You could create a list that finds everyone. For example, if we say recently verified, we can create a list. If we go to designation, and we say designation verified date, here we can say within last, and we can put in, you know, any number of days that we want. So if we set that up, that'll capture everyone who's been verified within the last 7 days, and that'll just give us a list of those applicants. You know, we can make it 30 days, you can make it whatever you want from here. Another way of going about that, what some programs do is have a process of going to all their recently submitted applicants, the ones that have just come in, and they put them in, they create a local status for it. So they put them kind of set them aside into a different local status. So then what you'd be able to do is to create a list that looks for everyone who's verified. So if we say applicant verified equals yes, who's verified but also doesn't have a local status. So we can say designation local status equals none. And what that'll do is if your process is to go in and grab the verified ones right away and move them into a different local status, this will kind of be a catch-all for you. So you'll be able to find, if we submit that. So this will show you everyone who's been verified that you haven't changed their status yet. And then that'll give you kind of a list of applicants that you can go through and change their statuses. And as you change their status, the applicants will be removed from this list. So the first time you do it, depending on how many applicants you have, you might have a few here. But then once you start changing their statuses, you'll empty out this list. And then if you come back maybe a few days later, anyone who just recently became verified will be back in this list since you haven't worked with them yet to place them in a local status. So hopefully that helps a little bit. It really just depends on kind of how you work your process there and how you want to go about doing that. So there's another question that was asking, let's see, how do we create the questions to put scores on the applicants, so like we were showing earlier. So if we go back to the assignment section, we'll scroll back down here to assignments. So if you're creating an assignment, again, this is kind of like creating a worksheet for your reviewers. So if you go down to that assignment section like we just did, click on assignments under management, and then we're going to click on new assignment. This lets you establish your assignment. You can turn it on for whichever programs you want it to apply to. And then here you can add the questions. So it'll, you turn on, just click that checkbox to activate the questions. And then you can add as many different questions as you want. So we can put, you know, rate the applicant's personal statement, then we can turn on scores for it, we can turn on comments for it, and we'd be able to add as many different questions as we want. And then when we submit this, again, what we'd have to do is go to the applicant's page. So if we go to any applicant, and if we go down to the assignment section, click on new assignment, then we would assign that particular assignment that we just created to our reviewer. And then once they get that, they'll be able to respond to each of those questions that we've established there. One of the other things that comes in handy with that, once reviewers have responded to those, we can also use the list manager to kind of query for those responses. So if we want to respond, maybe we want to find a list of everyone who had above a certain number for one of the review questions, or maybe above a certain total score for the review. You can use that from here too. So you'll be able to filter for assignments. We could say review assignment score greater than or equal to, and then just put our number in here, and that'll capture anyone who's above that score. So again, you can kind of play with it depending on what your process will be, and kind of make that work for you. Let's see. Another question was in regards to under the permissions. There's a box there. Let me go back to that section there. Let me click on work groups. Click on new work group. There's a box here that's called API access. So one of the questions was asking, what does that include? So if you check that off to grant API access, that's letting someone create an API key for themselves, and that kind of gets a little bit involved. If you have a process where you're transferring information to another system, so if you're transferring information out of WebAdMIT into another system, you can have someone on your side create API software which would communicate with WebAdMIT. So essentially they would create a piece of software that would, it would be coded to go into WebAdMIT pull out whatever information is designated. So if you check off API access, what that's doing is giving the person the ability to go in, and let's go to one of our users' accounts here just to show you. Actually, let's see, I'm going to go under the account that I'm already in here. If I go to account and edit my account, you'll see there's an option here that shows up, generate new key for an API key. So if I'm going to be working with the API features, I'll have to generate that key for myself. This option will only be available if that API access is enabled. That's kind of a brief summary of that, but hopefully that helps kind of guide you what you're looking for. One of the things you can do if you want more information on how exactly the API works and all of that, if you go to the Export Manager section in WebAdMIT, there's off to the right-hand side, there's some information about the API. There's a link to a document and also to a different site that we have set up that gives more API information. So it can get kind of involved, but that information should kind of guide you along to what you're looking for with API information.
Yeah, and if you need any support from Liaison, if you're looking to set up APIs or further integrations, I would recommend you can reach out to Lindsay, and Lindsay can reach out to me. This is Sader Hamilton. I'm the Director of Account Management for NAFCAS. So we can always help in that process and kind of walk you through it or walk your IT folks through it.
Thank you, Phaedra.
Thanks.
Let's see, so we got a couple other questions that came in. Okay, so one of the questions was asking to kind of see a little bit more of the applicant side of things. So let me just kind of give you a quick view around here. So the question was asking to see how the applicant would upload transcripts and letters of recommendation. So the way that would work, in the supporting information section of the application, there's a recommendations area. Once they click on that, they'll see the recommendation requests here. I have some instructions that tell them exactly how to work this. But if they click on Create Recommendation Request, here's where they'll fill out the recommender's information here. So they fill out all that information. They give a waiver here. They check off the permission to contact the recommender and all that. And what will happen is a notice will go to that person that they indicated that they want to be a recommender, and that person can fill out can respond to this electronically. So they'll be able to respond to the recommendation request there. And eventually that information will all go back into WebAdMIT. A follow-up question to that was asking if applicants can choose which letters of recommendation they would like to have sent to each program. And with this, I don't think, Phaedra, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's evaluations on the, I don't think there's letters of recommendation on the program-specific level, or are there?
Sorry about that, I was on mute. They're on the root level, so they're in the supporting information quadrant, so they're not at the program materials level.
Okay,
however,
yeah, so,
for the sites, some of the sites, I would say, from what I'm learning from Lindsay and from reading all the program materials, some of the sites have similar recommendation requirements. There might be a couple of different types of requirements, but yeah, they're all at the root level. Gotcha.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, so you won't be able to, for each program, you won't be able to set it up differently since those are on the core part of the application. But they will be listed here. And in your instructions to applicants, you might want to indicate if you want to kind of guide them a little bit with those. You can always include something in your instructions when you're setting up your configuration for the program. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so another follow-up to that was the number of recommendations that are allowed. So this limits, the core part of the application limits it to 3. So they're required to enter 3. and that's the maximum number that they can enter as well. Okay, so another question came in regarding verified applications. Let's see. I think we might have already covered that. Let me know, Deanna, if I didn't answer your question there. Okay, so a couple of questions that can kind of be answered in the same way, asking about training new people on the software. So a couple things are available to you. We have, I go back to our WebAdMIT page here. We have a couple of tools that'll be available to you. One thing that's probably a good suggestion to have new users go through to get trained up on the software. On the left-hand side, under Usage Help, there's this section that says WebAdMIT Basic Training Course. If you click on that, that's going to take you to a self-paced training that we have established here. And what it actually lets you do, this one is kind of in the middle of it, so it's not giving me the home page here. Let me go back. What this is going to let you do, anyone who wants kind of a training on WebAdMIT, this takes them through all of the main features of the software. So they can go through, it teaches them about how to set up users, it teaches them how to work with local statuses, send emails, work with the list manager, the exports. All that's available right in here, right within this module. And you can kind of jump around. You can do it in order, or you can kind of jump around. But it's set up in different videos, and then gives kind of some other information about each of these sections here. So that might be something useful if you want to get other individuals kind of trained up quickly. They can choose which sections that they're interested in and view those. We also have another, in our live environment, we now have another training course for more advanced things that gets into the application review and also some advanced things with exporting and some other tools that are available in the software as well. So I would suggest if you have some people that you need to get trained, that's probably a good place to start. And then, as always, if you do have any questions or if you have any issues, you can always get those passed along to us, either through our support team. I'll put our contact information back up there. Reach out to our support team, or if we have other requests for other webinars, you can always pass that along as well, and we'll see what we can establish for you there. All right, I think that covers all the questions that we had so far. If I missed any of your questions, I'm just scanning to see, but if I missed any of your questions, please feel free to pass it along again, and I'll make sure to respond to it. Okay, so another question came in regarding the local statuses. So the question was, if we move applicants to a local status that's tied to a decision code, does an applicant receive an email or see that status in NAFCAS? So the answer to that is no. They won't see. They won't know when you've changed their local status. The only way that they'll be informed of that is if you've attached an email to it as well, to go out from your side. So if you attach an email to send them some type of an update with that local status change, then they'll be informed of it. Otherwise, that's all internal, so they won't see what you've done there. I believe that's all of the questions that we had. I guess we have another minute or so if you have any others. Yeah, I think we covered all the ones that are there so far.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. To start, thank you, Reggie and Phaedra, so much for taking the time to do the training for us. Everything was very informative and very helpful. And thank you to all of our members on the call. The questions also very helpful and sparked some new things, new learnings for everyone. And I hope this webinar provided you with useful tools for navigating through WebAdMIT. I know it definitely helped me. And I've recorded this training. Should you wish to share it with anyone or listen in again, and I will send out that link shortly. And if you would like to tune in again, maybe another question comes up, or if you would like another fellow from your program to do the training, we have another one scheduled for September 20th. The link is in our newsletter, and if you are not receiving our newsletter, please email me so I can make sure to add you to that list. And once again, please contact me with any other questions. My number is 312-563-6629. My email is ltucker@nchl.org. Once again, thank you to everyone, and hopefully we will see you or talk to you on September 20th.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.